Okay, so we're going to do a video lesson today because we didn't have that many people show up online, and this is stuff that I kind of need to go over with you guys to make sure you understand it. When we last talked on Monday, we talked about ancient Rome as a republic, which meant people voted for representatives who were going to make the laws. But as they get bigger and bigger, a republic is going to be harder and harder to do. So we're going to see a couple things happen where Rome is going to change from a republic to an empire, and how that happens is what the basis of today's notes are. So we're going to look at the differences between the Republic and the Empire, and we're also going to look at some of the advancements that Rome brought to the world. All right, so when we set the stage, with the defeat of Carthage in the Punic Wars, which we talked about on Monday, Rome was proving to be the biggest and most powerful civilization on the Mediterranean Sea. The larger Rome's territory got, though, the more unstable it got. And the republic form of government becomes very difficult because with as many areas as they had conquered, they can't wait for everybody to vote for representatives and all those representatives to vote on laws. It just becomes unmanageable. Rome is starting to increase in wealth too. The more places they conquer, the more money that they're getting in. And that's going to bring problems. More money, more problems, right? So what the first problem we're going to see is that the poor people are getting more and more frustrated because the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And there's also a breakdown in military order. So we're going to address that with Julius Caesar in just a minute. You're going to see SPQR quite a bit, including on that video that you're going to be watching. And it means Senatus Poluesque Romanus, meaning the Senate and the people of Rome, referring to the ancient Roman Republic, and it's used as the emblem of modern Rome today. So what we're seeing is a gap between the rich and the poor, and it's starting to widen, meaning the rich are just making lots more money and the poor are just making less money. And the rich are living on these huge estates, and the poor are working those estates, a lot of times as slaves, because once they lose all of their money, they have no choice but to become slaves to even survive. By 100 BC, 1/3 of Rome's population is enslaved. So we have this small portion of people who are rich, and 1/3 of the rest of the population is now completely indentured slaves and not making any money. Then we have problems in the military. The generals are starting to seize power for themselves. So instead of the military being loyal to Rome and to the government, they're loyal to generals that they like themselves. And they start recruiting men and saying, listen, if you come fight for me and you're loyal to me, I'm going to give you land when we win, which the generals really don't have the right to do, but they're doing it anyway. So what that means is the people are starting to become loyal to the generals instead of being loyal to Rome itself and the government. One of those generals, and we're going to talk about him quite a bit, is Julius Caesar. He's probably the most famous person from the Roman Empire. And he's a general. And he's going to join forces with Crassus, who's a wealthy Roman, and Pompey, who's a popular general, to create a triumvirate. And whenever we see tri, we know that means that's a group of three. They ruled together for about 10 years. And the first triumvirate between these three is kind of an idea of if we bring together Crassus from the military, Pompey from the rich people, and Caesar, who's your just typical Roman, then that means they're going to be able to rule for everybody. In order to make sure that this deal is kind of sealed, Caesar gives his daughter to Pompey and says, here, you can marry my daughter. Caesar has a lot of success in a military adventure in France and becomes really popular. And when he returns, he starts to see that he's more popular than Crassus and Pompey. So Pompey says to the Senate, you should get rid of Caesar's legions, that means his groups of soldiers, take away his power. Caesar defies the Senate, marches into Rome, and Pompey flees, he runs away, and Caesar defeats Pompey and his troops in quite a few places, and when he returns, the Senate appoints him dictator. So we've just gone from having a government where people get to vote for leaders to now we have a government with Caesar in charge. He's the dictator. Nobody can question him. He makes all decisions on his own. In 44 BC, he's named dictator for life, meaning he cannot be taken out of power as long as he's alive. So even though Caesar has total control of everything, Rome still tries to say, oh yeah, we have a republic and people get to make decisions. but that's not true. They've turned into an empire now with a dictator. Now, Caesar doesn't do all bad things, okay? He is an absolute leader, but he expands the Senate, so he puts more people into the Senate. He grants citizenship to people that they conquer. And he helps the poor by creating jobs and doing building projects so that they have a job where they can get paid and they don't have to then become slaves. He also increases pay for the soldiers. So he does do a couple of good things. However, a lot of senators and a lot of rich people are really concerned that Caesar has all this power, he has all this success and popularity, and they think we're losing our republic, we're losing our ability. We think he's a tyrant, he gets to do whatever he wants. And they thought that Rome was really going to suffer because this leader had such a big ego. He thought he was the best of everything. So Caesar goes into the Senate. The Senate swarms him. They stab him to death, led by his best friend Marcus Brutus on March 15th, 44 BC. That's why we say beware the Ides of March, because that's the middle of March. So Caesar is taken down, stabbed to death, led by a gang of senators who were brought together by his best friend. So he was betrayed by his BFF. And for that, we name a salad after him and a resort in Las Vegas for all the stuff that he did. So next up is Octavian. Octavian was Caesar's 18-year-old nephew because Caesar didn't have any sons, and he was kind of the adopted son of Caesar. He takes power with Mark Antony and Lepidus, and they again formed the triumvirate, the three, thinking that's really going to work well. Octavian forces Lepidus to retire because when they made the triumvirate, Lepidus was already really old. And Mark Antony falls in love with Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. So this is the famous story of Cleopatra. So Mark Antony and Queen Cleopatra think, okay, he's got the Roman Empire, I've got the Egyptian Empire, we're going to get married, bring these two empires together and make a massive empire. That doesn't really work out for them, okay? Octavian accuses Antony of plotting to rule, so they go to war against each other. Octavian defeats Antony and Cleopatra. So they kill themselves. Antony and Cleopatra commit suicide, leaving Octavian as the sole leader. So Lepidus is gone. He was too old. Mark Antony and Cleopatra are dead now. Octavian is fully in command. So just like Caesar, when he went into the three-person group, Caesar ended up as the only ruler. Now Octavian goes into the three-person group, and he's the only leader. Octavian is going to take a new name. Augustus means the exalted one, or the one that's chosen by their belief in God. He's the first Roman emperor. So we no longer have a republic where people are voting. We now have an empire led by an emperor. He wasn't interested in being a dictator, though. He wanted to share power with his close friends and advisors. And he died of illness, though, shortly after taking over, like maybe 15 years after taking over. So even though he was very powerful, he doesn't last very long. So Vespasian comes in, and he is going to be a really good emperor for Rome. He worked hard. He lived in a stable relationship with a woman he loved. That was very odd for emperors because they normally had like several wives, like hundreds, and he's just got the one girlfriend. He's a very good soldier. He builds the amphitheater, which is later known as the Colosseum, and he died in 79 AD, just before the completion of that Colosseum. So he never actually got to see it completed. And then we have Trajan. So Trajan comes in, he creates the Trajan Forum, which I'll show you in a minute, an extensive reconstruction of the Circus Maximus, which is where they did all the chariot races. He has a great reputation. Everybody loves him. He's very efficient. But he falls ill and dies in 117 AD. So this is the forum that he built. And you can see they have the Forum of Augustus. They have the Forum of Trajan, Forum of Caesar, the Temple of Peace. All this big area is like their government buildings. And this is what it looked like. And this is what's left of the forum today. Okay, so Marcus Aurelius is really the last good emperor that comes in. He rules from 161 to 180. He's a gifted general, so he leads the military well. He's a philosopher, so he's very educated. And Once he dies in 180, his son Commodus is going to come in, and that's really kind of the end of the peaceful and good times in Rome. Now we're going to see like a whole bunch of really horrible emperors that do really bad things in Rome. So as a result of all this, I taught you on Monday that they were a republic with everybody's voices being heard. Within 3 days of this unit, they're an empire, which means that they have one ruler, an emperor, and he makes all the decisions. The time period we just looked at with all those really good emperors is known as Pax Romana, or Roman peace. And it's a time period of good things for Rome. Their population of 60 to 80 million, with 1 million people in the city of Rome itself, which is probably the biggest city in the world at that point. And Rome held together through efficient means of government started by Augustus. But what we're going to see now after this peaceful time is like 400 years of just terrible Roman emperors that just make really bad decisions and do bad things. But some of the things that Rome does do during the good time that's really good is the first thing is they make common coinage, which means they're going to make a type of money that everybody in the entire empire is going to use. And that's going to make trade easier because before Rome had their money, Greece had their money, Egypt had their money, Spain had their money. So it was difficult when you wanted to trade with someone because they had different money than you. So Rome says everybody who's been conquered by us, we're all going to have the same type of money. That'll make trade a lot easier. The next thing Rome is going to do is they invent roads. They literally make roads. And they came up with this concept. And they built 250,000 miles of road, which is a lot, throughout the entire Roman Empire. And that made trade and travel a lot easier. And this is still the same structure that we use for streets even now. So you can see they have like the drainage on the side. And there's a lot of streets in South Bend that are still like this, that have like the cobblestone or the stones here. And those were all invented by Romans. Now, 90% of the population during this time is poor and slavery is super common. So people are just living kind of these horrible lives, which is why the emperor comes up with this idea of the Colosseum. Let's distract all these people from their terrible lives by giving them entertainment. So they build the Colosseum and they decide that they're going to do these gladiator battles there and they're going to make things popular events for people for entertainment. And you can see they would release lions and tigers, and these people over here are Christians, okay? So they would choose groups they didn't like and they would just put them in the middle of the arena, and everybody, there's 80,000 people, would just watch the animals tear them apart and kill them. And that was their form of entertainment. Okay, so that's it for today. You saw the difference between a republic and an empire, people having a voice versus people not having a voice. Next week, we're going to look at the Christianity and the introduction of Jesus, who's actually a real person who lived in real life. He's a historical figure. So we'll talk about how Christianity changes our world forever, because it really does. What you guys are going to do for an assignment will be posted up on Google Classroom. You're just going to do a simple chart on the different emperors that we talk about next week. So if you have questions, let me know. If not, I'll see everybody on Monday.